Well, good evening. It is Sunday, September 15th, 2024, and we are going on a day early tonight because tomorrow we are going to be not able to come on at our usual time, and so we didn't want to go another week without coming on and doing a live broadcast and touching base with the folks out there in the community. And there's always a lot going on. And what we are going to be covering tonight is some things that have been going on, I guess, for the past number of years, but also kind of recently as well. And the title of this particular episode is called The Border, the Debate, Disinformation and Lies. And that's essentially what the main topic is going to be this evening. So this will actually air tomorrow at our usual time. So if you are joining us on Monday, this is not a live broadcast. This is a rebroadcast of what we did a day earlier. And so one of the things that actually happened, Rebecca, within the last, I guess, couple of hours, this is pretty hot off the press, and I don't really want to speak too much about it because there will be a lot more information forthcoming over the course of the next number of hours. And so by the time this actually airs tomorrow, there'll be a lot more details. So I would purely just be speaking out of conjecture, but obviously, probably most people by now have heard that there's been a potential, another attempted assassination, but we don't know that for certain. But there was an
However, I'd have to say that would not surprise me.
No,
but go on.
No, it wouldn't surprise me. It's one of those things when you talk about people in the sense that they are an existential threat, it really does ramp up people's engagement with, doing something that's, in that way. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. Many people have speculated that this isn't the last time that he was going to have an attempt on his life. So again, I don't know if that's what actually took place. We do know that a person has been apprehended. There were shots fired by the Secret Service. And again, there will be more information and details forthcoming. I will say, though, that we don't know anything more about the last individual that took a shot at Trump. And
Correct.
it's been months now. So it's interesting that we don't have more information on these individuals that are out there doing these type of things. But again, that's kind of where we are. So I think.
Which in itself, I think, tells you a lot that you don't hear about somebody who's the first one they killed, but yet you're not really hearing a whole lot about that. There's no real follow through on it.
Yeah, that's a little concerning, I would think. I think I would prefer that the government would be a little bit more interested in, informing the public about what they know when they know it. But it just gives me cause to think that maybe they know a lot more and they're just not willing to share that for whatever reason. And, I don't know if we'll ever really know the truth. And that's, again, part of what we're going to be talking about tonight is lies, disinformation, and, how that all kind of ties into some of the things that have been going on currently. But like I said, we're going to be out of town tomorrow doing some business. And so we thought we'd jump on tonight. But I would say for us around here, the homesteading aspect of what we've been doing has been a little bit, I would say, less intense because we are all the way through our summer harvest. And so there's really not a lot that's going on out there in the garden. However, I am at the stage where I am going to need to start prepping. In fact, I started a couple of days ago getting the space where I'm going to be planting some garlic prepared because I plant my garlic here in zone 9A the first week of October, and that is rapidly approaching. And so I need to get that space fully up and running. I did allow it to get a little bit dry, and what that does is that drives out the soil life. But if I introduce water back to that, life will come back in pretty short order. And so that's what I've been focusing on, is preparing that plot, adding water to it, starting to get in there and take out some of the weeds that have, taken over. So, garlic harvest is going to be, the garlic planting is going to be ensuing soon, as well as we will be probably looking at putting in some lettuce now that we're getting into fall. And we can typically, in this zone, which is really nice, we can grow lettuce for like 3 seasons out of the year. So in fall, we can grow in winter, and we can grow all the way into spring. So we have fresh greens around here to eat in our salad, which is really nice, so that we're not going to the store and getting some bullshit that has been sprayed with pesticides, or paying an exorbitant amount of money for something that's very, very easy to grow, or at least it is in our zone. If you live in some place where it's a little bit colder, obviously you've got other concerns that you might need to, do some kind of a season extension high tunnel, or do something to try to get you through those periods. Or you may not even decide you want to grow such a thing because it's, a little bit more time consuming than us here. But those are some of the things that I'm going to be working on moving forward.
So I would agree with you that our garden is kind of coming to a close right now, and the fall garden needs to come in, and the weather is definitely changing. It's starting to feel more like fall in the morning. However, there still are some little tidbits of tomatoes or peppers, some spices out there. So I'm still able to go out and kind of pluck a few things off. And
right.
I don't know if I told you that I went out with our grandson to get some tomatoes for the salad. And for the life of me, I could not get him to say tomatoes. He kept calling them potatoes. And it was the cutest thing. And all these potatoes. And I said, tomatoes. He says, potatoes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's, we're going to continue, to get some fruit, but off of our stuff. Obviously, all of a lot of the herbs that we have are perennials. They'll come back again next year. They're going to continue to produce for us, even after, they're through the peak part of their growth. A lot of them have put out flower, and, we're going to be doing some seeds and stuff like that. But that stuff's going to be available to us long until, we start getting into cold temperatures, which in a lot of years, that isn't really around December when we start getting it cold around here. And then January is usually a cold month too. But again, that's very relative, because our cold isn't your cold if you're somebody who isn't on the West Coast or someplace in one of these more temperate zones. Cold to us is, below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And so most people that are in areas where they actually get cold are looking at us like, yeah, that's not cold. And so that's one of the real nice things about living in a zone like this, is that we have long growing seasons, and we can continue to harvest stuff. But yeah, I pulled tomatoes off today and brought them in. I pulled, pulling still squash, and just kind of going through, and I've still got some melons out there that need to come off that are fantastic. It's funny. I actually had
before you get off the squash, I have to say, the other night I incorporated sweet potato with squash and made that mashed potatoes. And it was nice because I didn't have to really add anything for liquid, because the squash provided the liquid, yet they were still sweet,
right,
and good. So
yeah, no, that was a good call. I just like the way we're eating right now. It's fantastic. So
I did want to ask if you were able to grow celery.
I actually tried that a couple of years ago, and I didn't really have much luck. I mean, I'm certain that I can grow it. I just didn't put a lot of effort into trying to grow it. I'll give it another shot if that's what you want me to do. I'll put some in this year, and I'm sure I'll be able to grow it, but I didn't really put a lot of effort into it. It's definitely something that I will be able to pull off. I can guarantee you that.
Because that's something that can go into soups,
Mhm.
salads, potato salads,
Right.
various different dishes.
Yeah. So along with that, guys, just because I haven't been doing as much, on the homesteading front right now, we've got it set up so that it's more or less just dealing with the animals and just daily maintenance of the property. There's always the daily maintenance of the property. And so those things really never go away. It's just that the harvest, and then I don't have any big projects, looming ahead right now. I've got things I need to do. I'm just not focused on those right now. But that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that I'm not fully engaged on doing the things that are going to make me better tomorrow than I was today. And one of those things is just my fitness. And I really do feel like I'm coming into a pretty good space right now, leading into this next event that I have, which is coming up October 19th. It'll be a 100-kilometer race in Sonoma County, down around Lake Sonoma. And I have no doubts that this isn't something that I can go and actually complete with fairly minimal training. But that's not how I like to approach things. I like to actually enter races and then put the effort on the front side, because the race itself is merely just the celebration of all of the training and all of the preparation you've done on the front side. That's how I look at it. And so I actually really enjoy going out and training and wargaming and increasing my fitness. And I really do feel like my fitness is coming into its own right now. And so, that's all part of preparedness, guys. You've heard me say that here a bunch of times. It's absolutely just as important as every prep you have stored in the cupboard right now. If you don't have your health, all the things that you have put away aren't going to help you when you can't do the things that you want to do later in life, or you can't do them currently. So that's something that I've been focused on. And I know.
Well, yeah, I was running the ultras with Eric, not quite the distance that he was doing. And then I kind of lagged off for quite some time, since 2017. And something inside me just kind of clicked. And I thought, you know what, I need to get back into it. I'm more a swimmer than I am a runner. However, I chose to run and have stuck to it and surprised myself. So I would say I'm bettering myself in the fact that I am self-motivating myself to get out there and get in at least 3 miles, if not farther. But it is a minimum of 3 miles that I try to do daily. And I'm pleased that I'm motivating myself, and I'm actually able to run those, where before, even though I was able to go the long distances, I would run, and then I'd walk a bit, and I'd run, and I'd walk a bit, where now I've got to where actually I can run the full 5-6 miles. And so that's a huge improvement for me.
Yeah. And does that feel good? I mean, that's the question. Does that feel good to you somehow? What do you get out of feeling like, oh, I'm getting better, or I'm getting
stronger. I can feel that I'm getting stronger. Even if I'm breathing kind of heavy, I can tolerate it, and I'm getting stronger.
Yeah,
in that regard.
It's a mental strength that you gain by doing hard things. It's also a physical thing that your body develops adaptations for if you treat your body right on the other side by giving it adequate nutrition and giving it proper amount of recovery with good sleep. So I got to say, I'm really proud of you. This isn't anything that I've prodded her to do or said, hey, you should do this or that or whatever. She's taken it upon herself and, been completely self-motivated by that. And I'm like I say, I'm very proud of you for doing that, because not everybody likes to do things that are hard. Not everybody likes to actually go out there and put themselves in a position of discomfort. And that's what it takes in order to make yourself better in a lot of sense. And when you do that and you overcome that and you get to the point where what you used to do is now no longer hard, it's empowering, man. And it just kind of feeds upon itself. So again, I'm proud of you. And
on top of that, we have neighbor dogs who bark, even though they see you every day, they bark every time they see you. So for me, which kind of helps me go through this run is to antagonize the dogs as I go. So when I hit a house and I know this dog's going to bark at me, I'm like, come on, buddy, let's go. Come on.
Yeah, I know. They're pretty ridiculous, but that's their A game, man. That's what they live for. That's their big moment of the day, is barking at cars and barking at runners, And imagine that there's probably only you and I running down the road, so they don't get to bark at too many runners. So it's a big event,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Right. Hey, well, the other thing I wanted to mention, guys, is we actually hit 50,000 subscribers over the course of this last week, which, numbers are numbers, right? Subscribers, they really don't mean all that much, quite honestly. But what means something is the fact that people are actually, joining the channel. And for whatever reason that you're here, whether you are joining because I've put out a short that you like and you like shorts, and you'll never hear one of these live streams, or if you're somebody who watches maybe a long form content video, or maybe you're into something I did on chickens or biochar or whatever, there's going to be stuff that you may like, and there's going to be stuff that maybe you're like not that interested in. Maybe you don't like to listen to these live streams, but maybe you're somebody who actually does. And really the only thing that I wanted to say about that is that, I appreciate the people that have participated in the channel. We've been doing this for now about 2 years. And I started this journey with our homesteading aspect of this channel about 2 years ago. And lo and behold, just this last week, this last Saturday, which would have been yesterday, was the first day in 2 years since I started that I didn't post a long form video on Saturday. And I actually told you guys that I was going to do that here on this live stream at some point. And it's just because I don't want to feel like this is a job, because it's not that for me. It's a way for me to express myself creatively, share some ideas, come on here and provide a little bit of education, maybe some entertainment and some infotainment, if you will, and some perspective. And that's what these live streams have kind of developed and become, is a way to come on and just share some ideas, because I really do think that it's important that people express themselves and, we're not stifled by the man, because the man really does want to stifle just about all of us. I think that the man would much prefer that people didn't come on here and speak openly and honestly and give perspective. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, right? Because we're going to be talking about disinformation and lies, along with the border and the debate.
So before you get there, one of the things that we've talked about in homesteading is having extra water and whatnot. And we've referred to as our pool as a backup, one of our water sources. However, I've had some problem with the chemicals in our pool and have struggled to try to get that water clear. And it's important to me to have that water clear, particularly if we think that we're going to drink it at some point. And so for me, I was pleased in that it has taken me several days at figuring it out. I kept saying, you know what, I'm going to have to call a pool guy, have him come in here, but yet something just tells me, you know what, you have to figure this out yourself. You got to do it. So I got a new test kit and was testing the chemicals and working with it. And I'm just thrilled that it took me about 3 days, but our pool is back to normal.
It's taken you longer than 3 days.
Well,
You've been working at it for like about a week and a half, it seems like, because we started noticing it was starting to turn, and then you started doing some stuff, and you have been persistent at it, and you've always been the pool care person in this family. And whether it's dealing with the pump system or the chemicals in the pool or cleaning the pool, you've always been the one that's stayed up on that. You've got a lot of skill as it relates to that. So I was actually pretty surprised you were at the point where you thought you needed to call the pool guy, because that's usually something you can handle. But it's starting to look really good right now. And I think it was a pH issue, you said, and then
it actually, it was a pH issue, but I don't really want to get into this, but when you add chemicals, it makes the other chemicals either rise or drop or what have you. So anyway, it's just kind of tinkering with those until you get it to balance.
Right.
I watched a YouTube video, and the information that the guy gave me is he said, drain some water out of it and start fresh. And that's the information I took.
Yeah.
So I drained some out, which brought the levels back close to, and then it was the process of cleaning the pool and working with it at that point.
That thing's squeaking over there, that chair.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Swinging my leg.
It's going to show up on the sound here, and people will be pissed off about it. So we need to put some WD-40 on that chair. It's squeaking. That's no good.
It's like the neighbor's dog barking.
Yeah. Well, good job on the pool. Yeah. So, gosh, they just had the debate, right? This Kamala Harris Trump debate, and it was a pretty highly anticipated event. Probably because Kamala had been missing in action for quite some time. I mean, she was going weeks without nobody even hearing what she had to say about anything. And since the last debate was such a debacle for Joe Biden, there was a lot of people putting like, hey, what's going to happen in this debate? And so there was a fair amount of people that decided to tune in to this thing. We actually watched it. It came on at a time where we weren't doing something else. And so we had nothing else to do. We thought, oh, well, let's
shake, rattle, and roll.
Do you mind? It came on at a time when, there wasn't anything else going on. So we decided to watch it. And it's been about a week or more since that took place. And I've got some thoughts on it. And I don't know what your thoughts were on the debate that we just watched here in the last week or so, Rebecca, but maybe why don't you chime in and what do you think about it?
I would have to, I listened to a couple different folks and whatnot as I'm running. And so I would have to agree with one of them that Trump was being Trump and Kamala was being Kamala. And so, as we know, she lies, and she told many, many lies, and Trump was being Trump.
Well, do you think
and nobody called her on the lies?
Yeah, but do you think that it's going to move the needle for a lot of people, or do you think it's going to sway a lot of voters in the middle? What are your thoughts there? Do you think it was a worthwhile endeavor on, the American people wasting their time looking at such a thing? Is a debate even necessary? What do you think is the point of it?
On one hand, I think the point of it is, and it depends on how the person's internalizing it. But if you're watching it and you realize that she's lying, then yes, it's going to persuade you one way or another, and it's good to see her. If you're going to look at her and say, oh, that's Kamala, she's just so wonderful, and you haven't paid attention anywhere else, and you're just absorbing that, then that was a waste of time. In my opinion, that was a waste of time.
Right.
I do think that it's smart on Trump's part that he, a couple days after, did come to California and was answering questions, because he could have skipped California altogether, but he did come here and do a rally.
Yeah, I think that it was necessary to happen. I think it's necessary that the political candidates get together and chop it up, and so the American people can kind of, if there's any question that they have moving forward into the election, then they can make a final determination. But I will say that 40% of the people on either side, 40% of the left, 40% of the right, they're not changing their vote. It's going to either reconfirm their bias. They're going to choose their candidate, right? I'm openly admitting I'm going to not vote for Kamala. I'm going to vote for Trump if I vote. I could choose to vote for RFK. I could choose to vote for some obscure Green Party candidate. I could choose to write in Charlie Brown. There's a lot of things that I could do as a voter, but I'm going to actually put my vote where I think that it actually could potentially matter. I really don't think that it's going to matter much here in California, because I believe it is kind of a fixed system here that people just assume, it is what it is. And, California's off the table.
Well, that's why I think it's good that he came to California. Because like you say, he could have just skipped it altogether.
True.
And just said, well, California's going to be what California is.
True.
But he came here and he spoke to the folks for what it's worth.
Right. I will say this, that Trump was, I think he missed the mark in that debate in a lot of respects. Because he went into it, I don't think he thought that he was going to have Kamala look as good as she did. She actually outshined him. She out-showmanshiped him in that debate, I believe. She was far and away better than most people had given her credit for, and she was very rehearsed. She probably had some inside information regarding the answers, and that would not surprise me, or nor it should surprise anyone, since that's happened in years past, right? With Donna Brazile and Wasserman Schultz doing that for Hillary in 2016. So it's not out of the question that she didn't have advanced forewarning of what was going to be asked of her. And she was very well prepared, very well rehearsed. The opposition, or excuse me, the moderators essentially threw her softballs. And that's something that we should have all expected, right? We should have known that going in. And I said that the week prior, that was going to probably be the case. I think that Kamala, she surprised me, because she was very much out of character, because if she's off script, she sounds pretty lame. And so for her to sound as certain of, and here's the problem with Trump is he probably went into that interview not taking it seriously enough, and he was just doing Trump. He did a standard solid Trump performance, but that wasn't good enough, in my opinion, on that night, because it gave the mainstream media, which was going to be on her side anyhow, and promoting how well she did, and she's the this or she's that, and it just gave him that much more ammunition, because he didn't prepare himself. And he is somebody who is like a person with ADHD, where you can throw out shiny things in front of him and he gets distracted. And that's exactly what happened in that debate, because rather than him saying, you know what, I'm not going to answer that, David. I don't care about whether or not she's black. This is what I care about. I care about what the American people care about. And it's the fact that they can't put food on their table. The fact that the border's open and we have illegal aliens flooding into this country. He never was able to stay on message, which is what he should have done, and ignored those shiny objects that were thrown at him. And consequently, it made him look kind of bad, in my opinion. It's not going to change my vote. I think some of it was pretty funny, but the fact that the dude went there with they're eating dogs and all this other shit. I mean, it just makes him look unhinged.
That was the one comment that I think that he could have left out. And yes, he could have paid attention to other things a little bit stronger than he did. However, Kamala was not fact checked.
No,
with her lies.
No, but she wasn't.
And she should have.
She was not going to be.
But he was.
Yeah, you should. But you know what? We're going to fact check her tonight, because we're going to play some of those inconsistencies. And but see, Trump should have known that. He should have just been more focused and more laser focused, and realize how to pivot. His running mate, JD Vance, is quite masterful at that. And I actually saw some videos of him, I guess it was over the weekend, where he was talking to Dana Bash. And I mean, he just schooled that woman. She's up there trying to do the same bullshit that the moderators did to Trump. And he's not taking the bait. He's spinning it back around on her. And he's masterful at that. And there's a lot of people that are quite masterful at that. Ramaswamy would do very well at that. What's her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
No, not MTG. The gal that destroyed Kamala and last.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of her name.
I'm drawing a blank right now too.
I do have to say my favorite line of the night is, "I'm speaking. Does that sound familiar?"
Right. Yeah, no, that was pretty good. I think if I was to pick one, it would be they're eating the dogs, because that's made for some pretty interesting and funny memes and such. But
it has, but it's really not that far fetched. I mean, he said that, but it's not. They're taking the geese out of the parks and they're eating them. They're taking people's chickens and they're eating them.
Well,
so it's not that far fetched.
Here's the thing. There's all kinds of reports out there right now. I haven't seen a whole lot of confirmed, credible evidence of that. People are going to say anything on the internet, right? And if you want to take what you hear on the internet and run with it 100% without kind of maybe thinking about it a little deeper, then you're going to just be repeating a bunch of stuff that could in fact be lies. And I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, because we can all get caught up into that. But I will say this: with as many people have come into this country that don't have a problem eating cats, or they don't have a problem eating dog, there's people here with from other cultures where that's an accepted practice. And so if that's not happening today, if it didn't happen in Springfield, Ohio over the weekend or in the last couple of weeks, guess what? In the future, you damn sure well better believe it's going to. And so one of the things that it drives me crazy with Trump, this is something that absolutely drives me crazy every time I hear him get up and he's doing the thing where he's debating somebody or whatever. He misses this as an opportunity, which I don't know why he doesn't speak about this more often. When that dude, David Muir or whatever, came up and said, well, you've said this about black people. Well, what he could have said is, you know what, David, I've already spoken to that matter, and I'm not going to speak to it again tonight. What I am going to speak to is I'm going to speak to what the Biden administration did on day one of their presidency. These two things that the Biden administration did were the most harmful things to this country in recent memory. Number one, they signed an executive order reversing all of my border policies, and they opened up the border, causing millions of migrants to flood into this country and into communities that are affecting, currently today. Number two, the second thing they did also on that day is they signed an executive order canceling the Keystone XL pipeline. If he were to bring those things up and just keep hammering on them, because the Keystone XL pipeline, by cutting down and closing down our energy that we were developing and having flow into our country through Canada, it makes us a lot more reliant on getting those sources from elsewhere. It's driven up the cost of energy in this country. And along with that, it drives up the cost of everything. And that's something that people actually are feeling in this country is inflation. They're actually feeling the cost of food. They're actually feeling the cost of the goods and services that they are getting delivered to them. That's all coming from the energy costs that the Biden administration did on day one. So they flooded this country with illegal aliens on day one, and they made us less energy independent. That's what he should be focusing on. And it drives me crazy that he doesn't exactly know how to articulate that in a way that makes the other side look completely culpable and bad for the reason why we are where we are today.
Well, he did bring up
he mentioned it once, but it was just a passing mention. And it's like, dude, why are you not
and it was
hammering
towards the end.
Yeah, why are you not hammering that? You're talking about dogs, you're talking about all this other bullshit. But he's like Trump doing Trump stuff, and he's in the debate, and he got sucked into thinking he's in a rally, that he can just get up and start yammering on and saying a bunch of bullshit. And that plays well to his crowd, the people that are all there with MAGA hats, but it's not going to bring the independents, the people who are on the fence. And that's really what that debate was about. It wasn't about me or her, whether we're going to vote for him, because we are. It's not about the people that are going to vote for him.
You didn't ask me who I was going to vote for.
I know who you're voting for. We've discussed this. Trust me. You're voting for Trump more so than probably me at this point. But no, I actually like the guy. I think he's done good things for this country. Is he perfect? Of course not. None of us are. But he's had a lot of policies that have been good for this country. And one of them is immigration. He's the first president who's really done anything meaningful to try to stem the flow of illegal migrants into this country. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that that's happening right now today. We're talking about whether or not they're eating dogs in Ohio. Who gives a shit? Let's talk about this.
To show you how sketchy this is, we just came out east of Nogales, Arizona, heading out. That's the end of the wall right there. If you continued up and over those mountains there, you'd end up eventually getting to Naco, where the wall continues. All of this cartel controlled. Not a single Border Patrol agent that we've seen since we've left Nogales. There were a couple on the outskirts of town, just basically guarding the rain gates.
I'll be back.
As soon as you come out here, if I turn over here, this is what I want to show you. This, right down here at the bottom. Now there's a wall here. It's got razor wire. They still cross it. They throw some blankets over the razor wire, or they cut the razor wire and they go across. But right here, they don't need to do any of that. All of this section is wide open. And right on top of that hill is a cartel lookout. He's got a long gun. He's probably looking at us right now. And he sits up there and he tells the people when to come across here, when to bring their drugs, when to bring their people. All day long, this guy's operational. He's got a solar panel. He's set up. He's camping out up there, working for the Sinaloa cartel. And we're allowing it to happen. And the reason this section of wall is not complete is because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't want it built. The base of the Democrat parties don't want any walls. They chant no borders, no walls, no USA at all. That's who they are. Well, this guy and the cartels are making billions of dollars, and our people are dying from their fentanyl, and our people are dying from the illegal aliens that are coming across that these guys are profiting off of and that the Democrats are profiting off of.
So one of the things that I'd say about Trump is that he may say silly things here or there, but I really think that his heart is in the right place. Mm-hmm. And he means the best for the American people, not himself, mm-hmm. but for the American people.
Right. Well,
and I think that that's something that he really needs to portray more and speak, that it's for us and not me.
Well, I think he does that in a sense, but he doesn't do it nearly enough. He needs to point out the fact that they're coming after him because they're actually coming after us, which is true. Our voice is being stifled. Our voice is being muted, if you will. We're not supposed to have a voice as the people from the standpoint of the authoritarians. They want to tell us who is going to be our nominee, right? That's kind of how Kamala got to where she's at, right? She didn't get voted there. She got, the Democrats were told, hey, this is your new person. Get behind her, right? And so Trump is actually somebody who's outside of that. He's actually gotten where he's at because he's not part of the establishment. Why do you think you have Dick Cheney? Why do you think you have Bush? Why do you think you have Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney and all these insiders who the Democrats are now saying, oh, look at all these Republicans who are, endorsing Kamala. What should that tell you about the establishment? It's not because she's a stellar individual. It's not because of what they're doing and their policies are good for you as the American people. It's not going to put food on your table by what these people are doing. They're going to line the pockets of the individuals who they're beholden to. Trump's actually beholden to nobody but himself, and he's taking a pay cut to take this job. He's taken bullets to take this job, but those bullets are really directed at the American people more so than Trump himself. He's just the messenger, but he's got a great message, and I think that's resonant. It's resounding and resonates with the people of this country, many of the people of this country. There's a lot of people that just for whatever reason, they've got the TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and everything that he does, he's a racist or he's this or he's that. And he's probably all of those things to some extent, right? But you could say that about everybody. Everybody has a little bit of racism in them, and that's okay, right? I'm not saying you go out and you burn crosses on people's front lawn, but you know what? If you can't laugh at some shit, if you can't tell a joke, if you can't look at somebody and say, oh, that dude's different than me.
But would you call that racist?
No, I wouldn't.
If you look back when we were kids and we were watching cartoons and you had, say, the Little Rascals, and you had buckwheat and alfalfa, and and they were just all poked fun at. How about Speedy Gonzales?
Oh yeah.
And the slow mouse.
Yeah.
It was just and we all laughed at that. Nobody looked at that and said, hey, that's a Mexican mouse. That's the way they are. Nobody looked at that. You just looked at it as entertainment. Right. And it was funny.
Yeah. I think we just come from a different, era and generation, but man, those Looney Tunes, man, they were hard. They came at you hard. It was awesome. The racial, oversensitivity that exists now in society is doing nothing but driving people further apart and creating a more of a sense of unease in this country, I believe. But yeah, it's I don't know, man. Anyhow, getting back to the border thing, that's a real issue, guys. That's happening right now, right? It hasn't gone away. It absolutely hasn't gone away. And I would also direct you to take a look at this individual, this guy right here. He's got some information and he's on the ground. I think he's in Arizona, I believe, but he's a sheriff. Check him out.
Jones, I'm the Butler County Sheriff, Butler County, Ohio. I just came back from a national sheriff's training in D.C. 2 days ago. We were briefed by the FBI director, Ray, the director of the FBI, and several federal agencies. There's 3,300 sheriffs in the United States. The President of the United States refuses to meet with the sheriffs of the 3,300. We have a hierarchy. We have a president. We have a vice president. The President of the United States refuses to meet with the sheriffs. He also refuses to meet with the police chiefs of the United States. They have a hierarchy also. He refuses to meet with them to talk about border issues or to talk about crime that's going on because of the border issue. We were also told by Mr. Ray, the FBI director, that there are more red flags going off now than before 9/11. Okay? When I say red flags, meaning people that are here in this country that are wanting to do harm to us. We were also explained we're bombing 2 countries right now. 2 countries. These people do not like us before this started. There's thousands of people here from other countries, 160 different countries. They're here not to be our friends. Some of them are coming because they're wanting to come here to the best country in the world, the way we see it. Some are coming here to do harm to us. And we were told by the FBI director, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Today, you just saw Sheriff Richard Jones.
So I'll correct him in one thing that he said. He said that there's thousands. No, there's millions that have come here in the last 3.5 years, almost 4. Millions more people that are here. And, maybe you don't see them in your communities today. Maybe you do. But it should give you cause to think about the fact that you really shouldn't let your guard down, because those people are going to be looking for something and maybe you have it. So if you're somebody who thinks, hey, I've been able to live in this community for X number of years and I've never had to lock anything down, I've never had to worry about things getting stolen, everything's good, my neighbors are cool or whatever, that could change. I don't know. Over time, I think it's only inevitable. We've been able to see what's taken place over in Europe. They're probably a dozen or so years more ahead of us with regard to this uncontrolled just flood of illegals coming into their country. And, you're really getting a chance to see that right now. Those people over there, they've got a little bit different situation. They don't have nearly the protections that we have in this country from the standpoint of what the Constitution provides us. And so, they don't have the ability to really defend themselves from the standpoint of having firearms. They don't have the ability to say certain things. Well, they've been told that they do, but they're also being, having those things, I guess, threaten them in such a way that, causes a little bit more challenge to their freedoms of speech. So just understand that these people are here and they're going to continue to be here. It's a huge problem that, even if, say, Trump were to get in, how is that going to be dealt with over the course of the next number of years with deportations? I think a lot of us say that, mass deportations should probably be in order. But how do you facilitate something like that? I guess, when a plan is developed and they implement it, we'll see. But at this point, nothing's happening. And it's going to continue to be a political wedge between the left and the right. And that's another reason why the left wants them here, so that they can, have another constituency group that they can point the finger at to say, hey, That's the reason why they're sending you back. That's the reason why they're threatening your relatives. That's the reason why. And it just makes, the argument so that there's never any like resolution for what the American people actually want. We want security. We want law and order. We want rules enforced, right? We're expected to adhere to rules in this country, but other people, they seem to get a pass for it for whatever reason. And you have to ask yourself why. But just understand the border is still wide open. Nothing has been done meaningfully about that.
So that was the other thing that Trump said in the debate, was that you have the right to close the border. You don't need the people's consent. You
True.
have the right.
True.
Let's end this debate right now, and you can go sign the paperwork.
That's true. 100% true. They had it from day one.
And she had nothing to say.
No, of course. And she wasn't challenged, or they didn't do any follow-up, but that was all part of the skit, right? This was just a play. It was a skit. And she was very well rehearsed, and Trump was just being Trump, and consequently he kind of shit the bed on that. Now, whether or not he should have another debate, I would say that if he was going to take it seriously and go in with a plan and stick to the plan and deliver the plan, then I would say absolutely it would be in his interest. But if he thinks he's going to go in there like he just did in this last one, it would be the worst fucking thing that he did, because he would do the same thing and she would look even better. And I don't think that's what he wants. So he's going with I won. She's the one that wants a follow-up debate, and because I'm the winner, because she needs another shot. Well, that's not really how it is, dude, but okay.
Well, it is to a percentage of people.
Sure. I mean, there's
the same for her.
Yeah,
the other way.
But see, that's because of your bias, right? If you were looking at it objectively, you wouldn't say that. She looked from the standpoint, it's all about showmanship in these debates. It's really not about substance, right?
She sounded rehearsed to me.
Of course. But she had a very low bar to try to reach, right? Mm-hmm. She just had to not be Biden, and she was going to do better than people thought anyhow. She was just going to have to not be as lame as she's been in the past. And she's going to she's doing really good. That's awesome. And she did even better than that. So,
Well, again, I would say, I know that they weren't supposed to have teleprompters or notes or anything, but I would say that she still was getting some cues somewhere to keep her on track, because I don't think that Kamala could actually remember all of that and sound that rehearsed without somebody kind of probing. Don't forget this. Remember this.
Yeah. That's
So
entirely possible.
I would not be surprised if she did not have, and they did say this. I don't know this for sure. It's not like I saw it on her, but it would not surprise me if she did not have an earpiece in to keep her on track.
Yeah, they were talking about the earrings and whatever, but and that is entirely possible, where they would have just said, go ahead to go to script 2, or remember this, and they could have easily done that, but it wasn't like they were feeding her anything word for word. But whatever, it is what it is. It's all like a bunch of just for show anyhow. I think most of the American people have their minds made up, and I don't really know if the undecideds broke in her favor anyhow, because if you're just purely waiting at this point to see, if she has pizzazz to vote for her, then, maybe those people will be swayed. But I think most people, if they're reserved at this point at all, they want to know, what are they going to be doing for me substantively? What policies are they going to implement? She just talked about a bunch of fluffy things, and she didn't really drill down on anything, and they didn't ask her to. So
she didn't answer anything either.
That's what I said. Yeah.
The one thing that she did say that I think that people should take her advice was that they should go to a Trump rally.
Yeah. Well, let's stop talking about Kamala, because she's going to come up more here in the thing, and let's move on. Okay.
She's kind of a downer.
Yeah, I don't know. She'll be. I got some clips here coming up. So
okay.
Stay tuned if you want to get more Kamala. But I started a poll from last week, and it's only been on a couple days. And usually I like to let those ruminate for about a week before I give results on them. But since I'm going on a day earlier, and this was a poll that was put out somewhat later, the weekly poll, I basically asked the question: if you had to choose one of these things to keep, meaning the other is going to be abolished or not available to you, and the choices was between the First or the Second Amendment. And so for the people that are here in the United States, that's something that we're afforded to under the United States Constitution, right? But people in other countries, may not mean as much if you happen to be somewhere else listening to this broadcast. But I was pretty surprised, actually, when I saw the results from what votes had come in. I'd like to get a little bit larger sample poll before I fully, get an understanding of where people are at on that particular issue. But almost at a margin of about 2-1, people picked the Second Amendment over the First Amendment. And I guess that's a little bit, somehow surprising to me somewhat, just because I don't favor that as a choice. But what would you say, Rebecca? What would be the thing that you would want to keep, First or Second Amendment?
I actually would have said the Second Amendment.
Okay. And why so?
Well, because I think it's important to be able to defend yourself and be able to do it legally. It's not to say that you couldn't defend yourself, but there might be harsher terms if you're doing it illegally. So,
sure. Yeah, I think the Second Amendment is absolutely, a very important thing. It's essential to who we are as an Americans. It's a right that has been bestowed upon us from the founding of this country, and there's reasons why it's in place, and I fully support it. It's something that I don't want to see further diminished or go away in any respect. But I honestly, I think that the founders had it right in putting the First Amendment first, and without that, you don't have the Second Amendment, quite honestly, because I can get by without having the Second Amendment, because I can still defend myself in a lot of different ways, right? I don't need a firearm to defend myself, but I certainly need the ability to be able to speak my mind. That's what I'm doing here tonight. I'm speaking my mind. I'm opening what's coming out of my brain, and I'm amplifying it. And there's a lot of places you don't get the opportunity to do that. You wouldn't have the opportunity to do this in North Korea. I don't know to what extent you have the ability to do this sort of dialogue in places like Russia or Venezuela or Cuba or other places that are a lot more authoritarian, restrictive, and don't afford you those rights. And when you don't have those rights, whether you have a gun or not doesn't really matter. If you don't have the ability to speak your mind, you're essentially a slave. Think about that. The First Amendment protects essential freedoms such as speech. It protects your ability to have freedom of religion. You can choose what religion you would choose to worship or not worship. It has the freedom of press, right? The freedom for you to obtain information from media sources, right? The freedom for you to assemble, the freedom for you to go out there and stand on the corner as a group of people and assemble gives you that right to do so in a public space. It gives you the right to petition your government with your grievances. And these rights are considered the cornerstone of any free society, which allows individuals to express themselves and hold the government accountable. That's what I'm doing here tonight, right? And whether or not I have a Second Amendment doesn't necessarily mean my ability to have a weapon or to use it, because that's probably going to happen anyhow, whether or not the Second Amendment exists. There's going to be a way that people find to defend themselves when those things don't exist. I know that people have said, well, if you don't have the Second Amendment, that's what's going to, keep a tyrannical government from overrunning you and doing all those sort of things. Well, that's true to some extent, but understand where we're headed in this society. No longer is the tyrannical government going to even have to come to your front doorstep. They will just be able to shut off your internet, and they'll shut off your bank account, and they'll shut off all your other things that you're attached to on the system. And there will be no violence. It'll just be that you're shut off, and that'll be your first warning. And then the next warning will be that they'll just come in and they'll take your shit or put you in a political prison. That's what happens in authoritarian governments. And so whether or not all of us have weapons or not doesn't matter, because in an authoritarian regime, you don't have warplanes. You don't have the level of ability to, none of us own a tank, right? None of us own none of that shit. So what are you actually fighting with that? Maybe you can defend somebody coming in, some marauders and all of that sort of thing, which again, I think that to have a weapon is certainly a viable option. And I'm not saying that it's not valuable, but to put that over your ability to speak, I can't justify it. I definitely would take the First Amendment over the Second any day. They made it the most important amendment. They put it first because it safeguards the ability of citizens to discuss and advocate for their rights, which is crucial for the protection of all of the other rights, including the Second Amendment. So that's why it's first. And so, again, I wanted to see where people were at on that. And I'm not saying that any other decision that would be outside of the First Amendment is a wrong decision at all. But I wish we were actually doing this live tonight so I could get some people to chime in so we could have maybe that discussion and they could express why it is that they chose the Second Amendment over the First Amendment. But yeah, I guess that's a good reminder that this isn't live right now. We're recording this a day ahead of time. And so this is going to be posted tomorrow on Monday as a rebroadcast.
So I guess you still could gather in your home, or unless, like you said, in North Korea, where you're being monitored all the time. But it seems like there would be a way for you to be able to speak freely amongst those who have the same belief. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, could you?
If you could gather in your home and not be monitored by the regime or the government or whatnot, you in essence could sit there and speak your mind amongst those people in the house. You spoke gathering on the street.
Sure.
So there could be technically still somewhat freedom of speech amongst others. Sure,
that's absolutely true. But then you run the risk of those people being somebody who's going to say something that's going to get back to the authorities. And really, how meaningful is it that, you're in a forest and you're screaming out into the forest, but nobody's there to hear you? Essentially, that's what you have when you have a group of people that are all kind of in a room and they're just keeping it within that room. Now, if they're going to actually do something and they're organizing or they're, doing something to do something with that information, sure, we all have the ability to do that. Even people in North Korea have the ability to speak freely. There's consequences from it, though. And everybody, no matter who you are, you could be a prisoner in solitary confinement. You still have the ability to speak freely. It's just nobody's going to hear you. You see what I mean? So, well, having the ability to speak in a public forum, the danger to the authoritarian is that you influence other people, right? That's the danger of spreading disinformation or misinformation, which is where we're going next in this conversation, because it all ties to free speech. I think it's very important that we understand that we are dealing with this right now in this country. This is something that we've heard over the course of the past number of years very frequently. We've heard a lot about misinformation and disinformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that I wanted to point out, because this is a guy who's a Democrat, I would actually vote for this guy. I'm not so partisan where I couldn't vote for a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, that's the person I was missing the name of.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Democrat, or she was a Democrat, but she's sensible Democrat. See, that's the difference. And so it's interesting that so many lefties now look at her like she's just out there. She's speaking so much truth that that can't be. You have to be somebody who's willing to rip a child from the womb up until birth. You have to be somebody who's willing to allow people to come into your country unfettered, unchecked by the millions. And if you don't, you're a racist, right? But sensible Democrats are people that I actually agree with. And so since we were on the topic of freedom of speech, let's hear what this sensible Democrat has to say.
Frightening time now where we are seeing the normalization of censorship. I saw this quote that Governor Walz said last year, where he said that
there's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation
or disinformation. And he is legally wrong there. It does protect that. The First Amendment protects speech, true speech, and it protects lies.
Right.
It protects good speech and it protects bad speech.
Right.
It protects all speech. They didn't pass the First Amendment to protect speech that everybody likes. They passed it to protect the speech that's inconvenient, that's abhorrent, that nobody wants to hear, that's dangerous. That is the price of democracy. If we don't have that, democracy is gone. We're going to lose it. The idea that you have a guy who wants to be vice president of this country who does not know that. Louis Brandeis said that the remedy for bad speech, the remedy for lies, is not censorship, it's more speech. It is the marketplace. And that, if we don't understand that, we will lose democracy for sure.
He's 100% right. And that's sensible talk. It's always mind-blowing to me that people can't hear a guy like that speak and hear it for what it is. It's actually very sensible talk. He's not saying something that's radical or dangerous or, not true. He's 100% right. There's a thing called freedom of speech. And it's very much worth us protecting that at all costs. It's very much worth going out on a limb to maintain your ability to speak free and openly. Because if you lose that, you're essentially you are a slave. You're like you're in North Korea. You're so scared to even say anything that your neighbor might hear because they're a snitch for the government. And then if you get punished, you're going to go to one of three prisons, right? And I've done a little research on North Korea. It's a very reclusive and closed-in society. A lot of what I see, I don't know if I 100% believe it, just because there's so much shit there that we don't know about. But I do know that people wind up disappearing and their families wind up disappearing. If you try to escape North Korea, generations of your family will lose their lives. That's how big of a penalty it is there. It's an interesting place, man, to think that we have people on this planet that are living that way right now. If you can even afford to own a TV, if you've been permitted by the government to have a TV and then to have the ability to afford it, you're only given one, or I did hear another report where they say that there's 2 channels that you can get. It's all completely state-run propaganda, right? You're not getting any of this type of dialogue. You're not even understanding that, hey, there's a thing called TikTok where you can just pick up this little thing and look, or Facebook, or you can pick up a phone, and they don't know nothing about that, man. They're in a different world. And so that's what happens when you allow people who want to threaten the rights of others. That's why our founders knew the importance of what they established. And it drives me crazy when I hear people talking about, oh, the Constitution, it's a living document. No, the fuck it's not. It's not something you tinker with. It's something to be preserved. And we have people that say that. I've heard people say that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People I know have said that. And I'm just like going, oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard people say it's outdated.
Really? That's the fucking point of the thing, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't move with the will of the people. It is the thing that governs our government. Because when you start tinkering with that, you get what we have now. We've got people that are running for office that are openly talking about, oh, we need to abolish this. We need to abolish that. We need to do away with these freedoms. We have somebody right now who's running along those lines. I think that's a kind of a spooky, thing to be confronted with. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that this particular clip of this person who wants to violate free speech of Americans doesn't understand that the Constitution provides you to say things that maybe are inconvenient, as RFK had said, maybe some things that people don't agree with, right? But she doesn't see it that way. And here's a perfect example.
I guess the question about you I know you wrote to Twitter and the CEO, Jack Dorsey, and asked him to take away the president's Twitter handle, his account. How is that not a violation of free speech? I mean, the president has the same rights that you have, that I have, and how would that not just be a slippery slope where they have to ban, half of the people on Twitter?
I've heard that argument, but here's the thing, Jake. First of all, a corporation, which is what Twitter is, it does not have it has obligations, and in this case, Twitter has terms of use policy. And their terms of use dictate who receives the privilege of speaking on that platform and who does not. And Donald Trump has clearly violated the terms of use, and there should be a consequence for that. Not to mention the fact that he has used his platform, being the President of the United States, in a way that has been about inciting fear and potentially inciting harm against a witness to what might be a crime against our country and our democracy. And for that reason, I do believe that that it's clear that he has violated the terms of use, and I'm asking that Twitter does what it has done in previous occasions, which is to revoke someone's privilege because they've not lived up to the advantages of the privilege.
Well, isn't that the black pot calling the kettle black? It's always that way, it seems, with the Democrats. They're always projecting upon others what that themselves are doing. They are the ones who are inciting fear. They're the ones who are restricting one's ability to do these things, all in the name of what? Violating the Constitution, the thing that you swore to uphold. And so it's kind of instructive when you go back and you listen to what these actual liars say, because we were going to be talking about some lies tonight. That's an outright lie to say that Trump has said those things. He hasn't said any of those things.
But if they can make you believe what she was saying is right, and that is what he's doing, then they don't feel bad about the lie they're telling.
Right. And if they can silence people on this platform, if they can silence people on other platforms like Meta or TikTok, then what do you have? All you have is their worldview on things. And that's the value of the First Amendment. So you do get another side to the story, and you can make up the decision for yourself. Is that person telling some bullshit? Or maybe is it something that I should listen to? Because we were told for a long time during COVID, during all of that stuff, right? That was going on over the course of the last number of years with the Hunter Biden laptop story, with the Russian collusion, all of those things we were being told were wrong. And it turns out that much of what was being said was actually right from the standpoint of people who opposed it. And so if you didn't have the ability to oppose any of that, what would be, you would still not even know the truth, would you? You would still think that that vaccines, there was nothing to question there. You would still seem to think that there was a lot of things that, right?
Right. Well, yes. If you're going to go along with what people are saying and you believe everything that you hear, then yes.
Right. Yeah. So the violation of free speech is something that continually goes on. And it's really only because the speech that they're actually hearing is something that's touching a nerve and they want it silenced. That's why you should actually pay attention to it. It's not because it's harmful. If it was a joke, they'd make it into a meme, right? You'd see it all over TikTok where they're saying that, hey, they're eating dogs. There'd be a million memes about it. But it's those things that people say that actually call into question the official narrative that is so harmful to the authoritarian. So disinformation, that's something we've heard an awful lot about, right? From all the way from 2020, COVID. And I looked it up because I wanted to know what the actual definition of disinformation is. And this came right out of ChatGPT. Okay. It says this information, meaning disinformation, is false information that is deliberately spread to mislead people. Unlike misinformation, which is shared unintentionally, disinformation is intentionally crafted to deceive and manipulate public opinion. For example, political campaigns, disinformation might be used to sway voters by spreading false claims. Never happens, does it? Never happens. So I asked ChatGPT to give me an example of when Kamala Harris has used disinformation. And I also asked ChatGPT the same question about Donald Trump. Give me an example of when Donald Trump has used disinformation. And in both instances, it came back saying that it could not talk about elections. And that was out of bounds. Did you have another question? And so I further asked another question. I said, give me an example of a politician using disinformation. And it said, no problem pulling this one up, by the way. And it said, one notable example of a politician using disinformation is the spread of the big lie following the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Former President Donald Trump and his allies repeatedly claimed without evidence that election was stolen through widespread voter fraud, despite numerous court rulings and investigations found no substantial evidence to support these claims. The disinformation campaign persisted, leading to significant political and social unrest. And so I would say that's partially true, but partially, I guess, false. And, it says he claimed without evidence, right? That he repeatedly claimed without evidence that election was stolen. And I would say that there was evidence. It just wasn't heard. That's the difference, right?
I'd say there was a lot of evidence.
Yeah, there was a lot of evidence out there, and it just wasn't actually, they decided not to take the cases up, right? They just wanted to kind of move on and, hey, this would get pretty ugly and, it's already gotten pretty ugly. Let's just move on. And I would say that there has been, obviously there's been numerous court rulings and investigations that showed no substantial evidence to support any of the claims that were being made by Trump and his allies. So I would say that part is true. And, Trump did lose the election, right? We all know that. How that took place, that's, I guess, still a little bit in question for a lot of people. But again, the computer said, hey, I'm not going to talk about elections. But when asked about that, they had no problem talking about that election. But I also asked ChatGPT, I said, what is an example of government disinformation? And it says, one notable example of government disinformation is the Russian collusion hoax. This was a claim that Donald Trump had collaborated with Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election. The disinformation was propagated by various actors, including government officials and media outlets, and involved misleading information and false narratives. Yeah, that's quite true, right? It says another example is the COVID-19 disinformation spread by various governments, including misinformation about the virus's origin, treatments, and the effectiveness of vaccines. This disinformation led to widespread collusion and mistrust among the public. I thought, that's actually pretty correct.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah. And, so much to the point that recently, probably within the last, I guess it's been about a month, maybe 5-6 weeks, something like that. A letter came out that Mark Zuckerberg had actually come out and generated about a 1.5-page letter, which I've actually read in its entirety. I've heard it read over the internet, and I have a pretty good understanding of what it was all related to. But here's a brief synopsis of what that actually was, had you not got a chance to hear that. But Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and, his platform Meta, was influenced by our government, the Biden administration, as well. He was influenced by the FBI under the Trump administration to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. So take a listen to this, and this kind of briefly breaks it down.
CEO Mark Zuckerberg now says the Biden-Harris administration pressured him to censor content and that he regrets not speaking out about it. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee, Zuckerberg wrote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Zuckerberg said an FBI warning also led Facebook to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, which he said they will not do again. And he added he will not endorse or contribute to any campaigns this season after being criticized for funding voter efforts in left-leaning districts in 2020.
So, there's been a lot of discussion on that regarding the Hunter Biden laptop thing. Now, mind you, that was when Trump was still in office, but it was the FBI who, I believe, from what I understand, was getting fed information from the Biden campaign and the Democrat side about this whole, Russian collusion hoax, right? That was something that was coming from our government, the FBI, the trusted people that we're supposed to look up to, and to not think that they wouldn't do something shaky and everything. And so I guess we're supposed to forget about that. I guess we're supposed to just ignore it like it never happened and not think that it probably had a significant impact in the outcome of the last election. That said, nothing's going to change as it relates to the outcome of the last election. It is what it is. But it is important to understand these are some of the things that go on behind the scenes that are just being brought up to the point where we actually know. Just think about the things that are going on that we don't know. These are just the things that have come out that, there was, you were being pressured by the administration to censor information. Isn't that part of free speech and, all of these things? But they're a platform that has certain responsibilities and this and that. No, actually the responsibility they have, from what I understand, is to allow people to come onto these platforms and to have a free and open dialogue, and then let others determine whether or not what they're saying is bullshit. And if you're not smart enough to do that, that's on you. You should have every bit to listen to somebody who's an idiot, or somebody who's over the top, or somebody who's speaking something that you agree with. I think that's the beauty of free speech, right? Shouldn't we have choices, Rebecca?
You should have choices. That's what helps you come to the conclusion of what you believe, is to hear both sides and judge for yourself in that. And obviously, as you know, both sides, you're going to get a little bit of truth and a little bit that's not. And somewhere in the middle is the actual story.
I think that's how most people probably, that are analytical, that don't just take the things that they see or hear at face value and realize that, there's a reason why they're telling you this. There's a reason why Zuckerberg came out at the time he did to say what he said, and there's been a lot of evaluation on that. And I don't really care to get into evaluating that, but just the fact that he came out and said it it speaks volumes to what's going on behind the scenes, right? There's so much that we'll never know. There's just so much that none of us will ever know. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. But the fact that we're not even given that from our government, it kind of shows that we're not really that much in control.
Well, I'd say it's not fair and balanced.
No, it's not fair and balanced, nor is it a representation of what I think our founders had intended when we've got shadowy government agencies that, do what they do behind the scenes. I guarantee you they fucking listen to this right here, this broadcast. I know for certain they know about Porterhouse and Teal. How do I know that? Just say I know that. Okay?
Yeah, I think I got an idea of how you know that.
Right. But at the same time, without saying anything about that, just understand that they're watching all of us. And that's kind of like weird, is it not? To think that you've got government agencies looking at you because of the things that you say that might be in question or against a narrative that they have an issue with. That's called freedom of speech, is it not? Shouldn't we have to, have a higher expectation for those that we are been given, this authority over us?
It's kind of creepy.
I think it's beyond creepy.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty creepy.
Right. Yeah. So again, right, disinformation is intentionally crafted to deceive and manipulate public opinion. For example, during political campaigns, disinformation might be used to sway voters by spreading false claims. Now, Kamala, she's got a number of different claims that she's made over the years. and then, obviously what happens in political campaigns is they run to either their base, right? The left or the right. And then typically they run back to the middle to try to sway those people in the moderates and the independents, right? That's how it works, right? Hey, this is who we really are. But, we're trying to sway the people that aren't really paying that much attention. And so we'll say this and we'll say a bunch of stuff. And a lot of times we'll get away with it because people are fucking stupid. I've said that here a bunch of times on this broadcast.
Or and this comes along with the people are stupid, is that oh wow, they're really moving to and they buy that.
Yeah.
I mean, they just hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Just think, wow. But I mean, you have to really listen to the information that they're putting out there and how quickly or how close to the election it is that they change their mind.
Right. It's one of the reasons why Gavin Newsom, and maybe dude's having a change of heart, but it's one of the reasons why he's trying to clean up his act. He's out there in the homeless camps, cleaning shit up and, doing some of the things that he probably should have done since he got in office. But now it's like, oh, I want to run in 2028. So I'm going to start right now cleaning my shit up here in California, or at least showing
or at least telling you.
Right. And people will go with that. They'll absolutely, he's going to be the nominee without question.
No, that's their mistake.
Without question. But nonetheless, let's hear what Miss Kamala has to say, because, boy, I'll tell you what, boy, she is the star of the show tonight.
On extending a tax cut, repealing that tax bill they just passed. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
Everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
She was big on defund the police.
For too long, the status quo thinking has been
you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong.
She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border.
I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah, we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
Bidenomics is working. It's working. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. My agenda includes attempting to get Congress to act, but if they don't within the first 100 days of my administration, I'm going to take executive action. Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options.
I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Yeah, so there's a lot of lies there, guys. Remember, I told you we'd be talking about some lies tonight and disinformation. There's a combination of both of those things going on right there. She's full of all of that. One thing that she did say that was very much true. It's something that's true, and she said that she and Tim Walz are gun owners, and that's 100% true. But see, that's how it works. For people who are connected, they have no problem getting gun permits.
Yeah, it's okay for her.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why, I like the county that we live in right now. So for those that don't know, here in California, certain counties have sheriffs that are a little bit more lenient with regard to the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment is something that is supported here in the county in which we live. And we both have our CCW permits. For those that don't know, maybe you live in a constitutional carry state where you don't need such a thing. But we here in California need an actual permit to carry a gun in a concealed way to go out when we're out in public. We want to defend ourselves. And so we're able to do that here in this county without any real hesitation, just providing you're not some kind of a criminal or you have something in your background that would draw a red flag. I don't think that it should be that way, but that, again, is California, and that's one of the hoops we have to jump through. However, the county that we came from, you ain't getting one of those. Not unless you're somebody like Kamala Harris. Not unless you're a district attorney. Not unless you're a judge. Not unless you're somebody who's connected politically and knows somebody who's going to get you the ability to have that, right? They're going to give you that justification. So I guarantee you that they have guns. They probably don't often have to carry them. At least Kamala doesn't in the last 4 years, because she's got a team of armed guards that surround her everywhere she goes. And I'm not saying that's not.
Maybe those are the guns she's talking about.
No, it's not. It's not. I guarantee you she's got the ability to have a gun, as well as Tim Walz. And I'm sure that they have those guns. She probably doesn't know how to use it, right? But she's got a gun. So I think what she said there was absolutely true. But they just don't want you, the American people, the law-abiding deplorable, to have a gun. That's what they really don't want. Mm-hmm. And if you look at all the countries that are having issue right now elsewhere, most of those don't have the ability to have private gun ownership. Certainly not to defend yourself in a self-defense way. Places like Canada, you don't have that up there, up in Canadian land. They don't have that in Great Britain. They don't have that in Japan. They don't have that in Australia. Those people are without that Second Amendment, that protection that we have in this country. It's absolutely something that's worth defending. It's something that's worth fighting for. I still don't think that it's, to me, it rises to the level above the First Amendment, because the First Amendment gives you the ability to argue on behalf and to petition your government for the right for that Second Amendment. But yeah, Kamala, she's somebody who's, hey, it's good for you, or it's good for me, but not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another great example.
Anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
I do believe that we need to do buybacks. I support buybacks.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
We want to ban assault weapons. We need an assault weapons ban. We need reasonable gun safety laws in this country, starting with universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapon ban. I'm also in favor of the assault weapons ban, of universal background checks, red flag laws. Congress needs to have the courage to act and renew the assault weapons ban. So it's clear that we must renew the assault weapons ban. Let's have an assault weapons ban. We need an assault weapons ban. Demanding, as we all do, red flag laws, universal background checks, and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. We're saying we need reasonable gun safety laws, including universal background checks, and to your point, Chris, a renewal of the assault weapons ban. It's just the right thing to do. But we still need an assault weapons ban. And yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously. And decisions is my values have not changed.
Well, there you have it, right? She not only wants to take away your First Amendment or to place restrictions on your ability to hear information coming from media outlets and determining what is actually acceptable from the standpoint of speech, right? It's disinformation. It's misinformation if you speak about any of the things that they're ramming down your throat. If you want to provide any, critical thought or opposition, or there's people that maybe have question about it, no, you're going to be deplatformed. You're going to be silenced. You'll be given a strike. And then she doesn't want to take your guns, but everything that she's been saying there her entire career is on display right there. So it's kind of hard to imagine that there's really anybody in states that actually have these freedoms and that they think are important, that they would actually overlook that in favor of some feel-good bullshit about, a woman's right to choose. Yeah, that may be your issue, but you lose those other things, you're not going to have that either, right?
Mm-hmm.
You lose the ability to address the grievances that you have within your government, or you're only going to get one side of the story. You're going to just put your mask on the next time and don't question the authorities. There was a lot of people who were willing to do that this last time. And that was, I'm still a little bit, I guess I'm a little bit unsure as to why there were so many people that did that, other than that's one of the primary motivators for people in general is fear.
I'm surprised there's still people out there wearing masks.
Yeah, I haven't seen many of them. I think we did see a few of them up there in Ashland when we were up there in Oregon a week or so ago, right? Wasn't there some people walking around with masks on because
yes,
they had allergies or something, or maybe they were getting ready to rob a bank? Maybe, I don't know.
I saw a couple in the store yesterday.
Oh, in our town?
Yes.
Oh man, it's well, you know what? I think there's a lot of old people, right? There's a lot of old people, and old people get scared when they start, talking about flu season and this and that, right? And if you're somebody who's like unhealthy, if you're already got, pre-existing like things going on, that can be pretty frightening. You think, oh, I get the flu, I could die. Well, that's a lot of people that actually do die of the fucking flu when you're old. When you're old, man, a lot of things go bad. And so that's why you got to start taking care of yourself now. Start eating the right things and treating your body right, because it ain't going to get any easier, man. And so that could be very much the reason why those people were doing that. It's hard to imagine that people are still freaked out about COVID, but I think they're actually still pushing that as as a concern? Are they not? Or I haven't heard, but I don't follow that too much.
I think they are to a degree, but it's not as strong as they were before.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they've got, some people to bite, I think that they're always going to put that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think what we've talked about tonight and, what's going to be taking shape over the course of the next few weeks, months, possibly years, seemingly there could be a lot of big changes ahead. And some of those changes, guys, I think a lot of us have already war gamed out in our own minds, but some of which we may not have even thought of yet. There's probably things that are going to be thrown our way. Who knows? That are going to catch us off guard. And I think what's important to kind of keep in mind is that, each of us individually is going to have to navigate the future largely dependent upon what we do today and what we've been doing up until this point. That's why preparedness is so important. That's why, making sure that the things that you believe are most important to you to keep yourself, if something were to happen, comfortable, that you're preparing for those things now. Don't wait until it's too late. Because I could easily foresee, and this isn't some doomsday bullshit that I'm thinking. I just know that there's a lot of tumult. I know that there's a lot of bad actors out there that want to see things kind of be disrupted and cause chaos so that they can come in with a solution to change things, whether that be the monetary system or implement some other wide sweeping program that needs to be put into existence. I think that those things are just an inevitability. And the more people that we have that are thinking about, I'm just going to try to keep chugging along each day and making myself a little bit better so that if we do have another disruption in our food supply, if we do have some kind of an internet disruption, some cyber thing, I don't know if any of us really know what's going to happen if there's a long-term disruption of our ability to communicate. What would we do if there was some kind of let's say an attack, an EMP or something like that shut down everything electronically, or just a cyber attack? And you didn't have the ability to pick up your phone and text your loved one. You didn't have the ability to actually pick up the phone and call somebody. You didn't even have the ability to get in your vehicle and drive somewhere because your vehicle's pre-19, it's not pre-1964 that doesn't have a cap, rotor, and points and plugs. It has, electronics in it or something that's been affected by something that causes this massive paralyzation of society. These are all like the doomsday prepper scenarios and all of that kind of thing, right? There's books out there, there's movies, there's all kinds of shit that people glom onto, but it is a real possibility that something like that could in fact happen. And when it happens, how are we going to navigate that? How are we going to contact our loved ones? What systems have we put into place that are going to be some form of redundancy? And that's all I'm saying here is that I don't think that the people that are running for higher office, a lot of them don't have the same concerns as us because they're really thinking on a different level, because they are the people who are going to be protected. It's not going to be the people of Baton Rouge the next time the hurricane comes through, right? Those poor bastards are going to be the last ones to get help. But the federal government will be fine, right? Continuity of government. That's a thing. And so just think about it and understand you are your own best first responder. And I want to leave you with a quote that I dug up, and I've heard it, years ago, but I found it again. And it's a quote that I think is really, for the moment of what we've just been talking about. And it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it says, "Don't be pushed by your problems, be led by your dreams." So, that pretty much sums it up. We all have things that are going to be problematic for us in the future or are problematic now, but don't be pushed into doing something because of a problem, but instead be led by the things that you want to do, the things that are most important to you, be led by your dreams. And so that's kind of what I'd like to leave you guys with tonight. I know we talked a lot about politics and all of that sort of thing. And obviously Miss Rebecca has something she would like to add.
I do. I would like to add something a little bit on the happier side, but as you know, we do the homesteading, and we've talked about that. And one of the things that we had sold in the past was some lambs. And while I was shopping yesterday, I had a gentleman come up to me as I was checking out, and he says, "Hey, aren't you the lady that sold me the lamb?" And he pulled up the face of the little lamb we sold him, and he began to tell me all about how wonderful this lamb is, and they absolutely love him. It's a very heartwarming story. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool, man. Like when you meet people in public and they're kind and they have, they're not, I don't know. I think that's what you get more so in a small town where people are more inclined to make eye contact or say nice things, or, it's just that kind of interaction that is so like incredibly, like, I guess, meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you go to a big city, it's just such a different feel, man. I just don't dig it at all. People are so closed off, but yeah, that's a neat thing so how is he doing?
He is doing great.
Yeah.
He walks on a leash. They absolutely love him. He is their baby.
Yeah.
The other, just to compare what you had said, I went to school I went to college in a small town. I did get a job in a larger city, and so I transferred to a university that was bigger. And let me tell you, that is a huge difference. When you go to a university in a small town, people interact. They're social. This has nothing to do with homesteading, by the way. But anyway, they're social. They're interacting with you. The instructors have time to talk to you afterwards. But when you are in a city, they're out of the classroom before you are.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's just a different speed, different, pace, different, all of those things. But again, guys, we're going to get out of here. We still got some things we got to tend to on the outside, on the homestead, and get the dinner going and try to get into bed at our normal time. And, we thank you guys for joining us on the rebroadcast. And remember, you can catch this on Spotify. We'll upload it over there as well if you want to hear it commercial free without any ads, or if you want to watch it here on YouTube. We'll be back next week, hopefully, I believe. I'd have to look at the calendar to see if we don't have anything pressing. But again, I am putting a lot more emphasis in my training and stuff. And I've got some things coming up that are going to probably take me a little bit away from putting out the content and doing those sort of things. But I do enjoy coming on here and sharing some thoughts on these lives. And we're glad that you guys have joined us as well. And we hope to see you in real life next week.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. But remember, homesteading is not harmful content, of course. Of course, maybe this might be deemed harmful content, what we talked about tonight, but we'll just wait and see how that transpires. And go out and be better tomorrow than you were today. Thanks again, guys.
Good night, guys.